You're listening to the Fezcast, produced on behalf of the Saracen Supporters Association and featuring the independent thoughts, rants and rambles of Saracens fans and special guests. If you'd like your opinion to be heard on the show, you can find the Fezcast on Facebook or Fezcast_SSA on Instagram and whatever Twitter is known as these days. But for now, enjoy this week's show.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Are you thinking I'm leading this?
We actually worked that one out. Who's doing it?
It was always going to be you.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, that's a different start to the show anyway. I think I'll leave that in.
Yeah, I think maybe we should.
So here we are, professional as ever, with absolutely no preparation on my part or Matt's part.
None of mine.
We have actually got an interesting show coming up because Jez had a great chat with Rob Webber, which will play probably second in this, when he basically makes us redundant by talking about the game on Saturday and previewing the match away in Paris next week. But we'll start by talking about the women's game at Leicester. I don't know about you, Barry and Matt, but I haven't even seen the highlights. So I thank goodness we've got Alex here, who actually made it up a very windy M1 and from a very windy car through a very windy car park into the stands. So well done for doing that, Alex. Fantastic result. Was the game as good as the result?
Yeah, it was really good. The first half was probably better. Towards the end of the second half, we didn't do much apart from defend. But I think that's also a credit to Leicester that they didn't just let us score try after try, and we were able to hold us out for at least some of it.
And the most important thing is that we got that winning bonus point, which I think puts us up into second place, doesn't it?
Yeah, so in second, they're in 2 points behind Exeter, but they've got a game to play, so their Bristol game is postponed.
But at least we're in second. That's the main point, because I'm so hoping that we're going to get that home semi-final as well as the final this season. So who stood out in the game?
Fancy Bermuda's played really well. She got a 1 try assist for the second try, but also just her work around the field with both in defence and attack was really good, especially on her first start.
I think Fancy Bermudas is becoming my favourite player, not just for her voice, which I thought when you spoke to her last week, Matt, was mellifluous, but there's a great picture of her doing the rounds. I think she's borrowed Nigel Eaton's outfit and got the chainmail and the fez. Was it good fun talking to her?
Yeah, I was standing nearby when that photo was taken as well. Yeah, she's a great character, and obviously it's my fantastic editing that made her sound so good on the podcast, and far better than my current performance on this show so far.
Far better than any of our performances apart from Alex.
Yeah, I'm glad we've got Alex here, to be honest. But yeah, I mean, I've seen a little bit of the highlights as well, and obviously read some of Alex Osterbury's words too, and he's obviously praised Fancy's introduction to the game. Yeah, for someone who's not played a lot of 15s rugby recently, has proved that she's been able to jump in pretty quick, and she's keeping some very good players out of the side on the wing as well. So plenty more to come from her this season as well. So yeah, fantastic.
I tell her a lie. There was one clip that I saw where she played a pretty major assist, and I can't remember the player who actually went over the line. But once again, it was really high quality rugby. With the 2 games that I've seen recently, the quality of the rugby that Saracens are playing in those last 3 games has just been exceptional.
Yeah, and I think we need that because the league's improving overall, and there's no team you can kind of think we don't have to play so well because we're going to beat them. Any team could beat us if we don't play up a good game, and they do. Overall, the quality of the league's improving.
And isn't that great? And I do really urge, I've said it before on the Fezcast, if you're not getting down to at least the odd women's game, you really are missing out on some exciting, high-quality games.
We spent all this time talking about Fancy Bermudas, but we haven't even mentioned the Player of the Month yet, Alicia Corrigan.
Certainly. And how was she on Saturday, Alex?
Yeah, I think she's good. I think she maybe wasn't so prominent as she has been in other games, partly because Fancy was, and we tended to just go more to her. But quite often, either one of them would come off the wing and they'd work together, which is really nice to see.
I'm really glad that Barry said her name, because it was her that your granny gave me a ticking off about, wasn't it, Alex? about getting her name wrong.
Yeah, I think so.
That's something you're fairly well known for, isn't it, Duncan?
I am.
We had a chat about what was it? Emmanuel Faye Wasabi was the ultimate favourite.
Well, that's his name, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh dear.
He's certainly hot stuff, that's for sure.
But yeah, I mean, going back to Alicia Corrigan, I think we saw it from her first stint at Saracens as well. I think one of the best things about her is that she's not just an out and out winger. She does play 13 a fair bit as well, and you do quite often see her cutting inside and making a very, very good run straight through the middle of the park, and very difficult to pick up. Very similar to someone like Jess Breach in that regard as well, cutting those diagonal lines across the pitch. So unsurprising that she's hit the ground running with us again.
We'll probably be talking about a few extraordinary kicks in the men's game, Alex. But how was the kicking in the women's game?
It wasn't that bad. The stands blocked out some of the wind. Zoe Harrison did really well. She got 4 out of 6 conversions. Not loads of kicking in the game.
Her kicking at the moment is just extraordinary. She's always been a good kicker, but especially the conditions we've seen her play in recently, she's just really on top of that, isn't she?
Yeah, I think that's good for her, because that's something England have struggled with in the last couple of tournaments. So that will help put her in a good position to say, look, I can be your starting play half, and I can, this is what I can do with my kicking ability.
What's up next for the women? A tough one, I think, isn't it?
Yeah, I've got Gloucester Hartbury away, which is probably one of the toughest games of the season. And they're just coming off a couple of wins against Loughborough. It'll be really interesting to see that.
Are you going to be going to that one?
Yeah, I am.
Making some major appearances on the show in the next few weeks. Alex, 3 in a row.
Yeah.
Is it next weekend?
Yeah, it is on Saturday.
I'll be in Paris on Sunday showing off a bit, so I won't be able to make that one. Yeah, I know.
2 jets. We've got Bristol Bears at home the following week as well, which, I mean, there's obviously a bit of intrigue around Alona Marr joining Bristol. I don't think she'll be ready to actually play in that game, but I'd imagine she may well be around, so chances are there'll be a bit of a buzz around the ground in a couple of weeks' time as well.
That's right. Well, it's an exciting time for the women's team, and as Alex has said, a really, really exciting competition. So do get down to that Bristol's game if you can possibly make it. It is very much worth it. So we'll take a break there, and we'll be back with Jez having a very interesting chat with Rob Webber.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
You are listening to the Fezcast, which is proudly sponsored by the Saracen Supporters Association, and I'm Alison Davis, one of the SSA committee. For a £10 annual subscription, the SSA provides our members with monthly newsletters, virtual and in-person player events, away match ticket allocations, and we organise pre-match gatherings at away matches. We sponsor men's and women's players, and we support the Saracens Foundation Track Club on behalf of our members. On top of all that, every year we have a seasonal SSA badge, which is exclusive to members. Where else can you get that much value for a tenner? Join now at membermojo.co.uk/SSA, or come and see us on match day in the Oasis at the Stonex.
This is the Fezcast.
Welcome to the Fezcast, to one of the newer members of the team, joining in the summer, a guy who played for Wasps, boo, Bath, boo, Sale, well, we don't mind Sale too much over here, but 16 caps for England. I've recently been coaching Chicago Hounds and Jersey Reds, but joined as assistant forwards and transition coach. Bit of a mouthful there, but welcome to Saracens, to Rob Webber. How you doing, Rob?
Hiya, thanks for the intro. Yeah, very happy. Great to be involved. Yeah, been a whirlwind year, but very happy to be here now.
You've been all over the place, as we said, Jersey to Chicago and now back to North London. I mean, how did the role come about? How did you end up in North London?
Long story short is basically Nick Kennedy rang me up, who does some of the recruitment work here at the club, does the recruitment work at the club, and said that there was potentially a role that might suit me and would I be interested in it, and it sort of went from there. And obviously when a club like Saracens reach out to you, you listen, first and foremost. So yeah, my family and I made the decision to move back from Chicago, which we'd ended up in Chicago after the demise of Jersey Reds, those that can remember. So that was a bit of a needs-must opportunity that took us out there. But then we loved our time out there. It was fantastic. I would have only really come back to coach at 3 or 4 clubs, not every single club, if that makes sense. And when Sarri's wanted me to come back, I was like, well, 100% we'll have a bit of that. So that's what led to the decision. Yeah. So we did just under a year in Chicago and then moved back here. Yeah.
Well, fantastic. I mean, it's kind of unusual for Saracens not to promote or bring in from within. I mean, a lot of players play for Saracens and then move into coaching roles. So for you coming in from the outside almost, no skin in the Saracens game at any point other than being a thorn in our side on a few occasions. How was it fitting in with the team around you?
Yeah, and look, that was probably one of the big factors as well that made me decide that I definitely wanted to come, is that I think that hopefully the guys had seen something in me that they wanted in the building. So that was really encouraging that they did that. And then to answer your question, initially nerve-wracking for sure, because all the other coaching staff have been here donkey's years, and I've obviously got great relationships off the back of that with each other and the players, and I'm just sort of starting out on that journey. So I'm trying to work hard to catch up. But the club itself and the guys and all the other staff have been fantastic in bringing me in and up to speed and under the wing and all different kind of analogies like that. So yeah, no, it's been pretty easy in that sense, but also working hard to make sure that I get up to speed.
The next question to ask, looking through when you joined the club, the things that people said, and Mark McCall, Smalley said, that you're a bright, ambitious young coach, and that wherever you've been, people have always talked about your attention to detail, but also the fact that you're a people kind of guy. Was that something that you brought and are bringing to the organisation?
Certainly trying, for sure. I think a lot of that, what you've just sort of said, is how I kind of see coaching, if that makes sense. I think you have to try and have detail and method to what you try to deliver, but then ultimately, you're trying to deliver it to human beings that you need relationships with, and some people understand things in different ways, don't they? So a video clip might work for someone, whereas a conversation might work for someone else, versus just get out there and do it might work for someone else. So understanding the players and who needs what and how they learn and how they're taking on information is a big part of it, and something which I'm constantly trying to get better at, for sure. And the challenges here, doing that here compared to some of the previous clubs I've been at, are very different. You're dealing with a different group of people, a big group of people. Would have been a big squad compared to some of the lower league teams that I was at. And you've got everyone from Argentinian internationals, the British Lions, to academy lads, to people from all different walks of life, aren't you? So it's about trying to bring everyone together under a common message, if that makes sense.
Certainly does. And I mean, it does seem to be working this year, and we'll talk about that a bit later on in this. But first of all, we talked about you as a coach. Now let's talk about the club. And we're talking on Monday lunchtime. After a fine win in the wind, I mean, you don't think of North London as being in the sort of like the tundra, do you? But
right.
I mean, it was abysmal conditions on a Saturday, but a fine win for the lads against Vodacom Bulls. I suppose the first question is, was this a bit of a reaction to the previous week, where a performance at Falcons, which we were pretty critical about on the Fezcast? I think that's fair that we should be, because it wasn't right, was it, the week before? But you got a reaction out of the lads, which is always good to see.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I think no one's going to shy away from the fact that we weren't right where we last week in Newcastle. That's not doing discredit to Newcastle, but we weren't anywhere near where we wanted to be, probably in any area of the game. So what was interesting was there wasn't a huge we must have a reaction, because I think that's kind of expected, if you know what I mean. That after that, I think everyone here is good enough to put their hands up and admit and push on the week after. And certainly we were more aware that if we weren't at our best, we would have had a very tough night against the Bulls, that were a very strong team. So yes and no, I think, is the answer to your question. Obviously it was a great reaction to last week, but I don't think we were sort of saying there has to be one, because I think we knew we'd get it.
It was difficult conditions. I think the Elliot Daly penalty kick to touch that went out almost on the full in our own goal line. I mean, did that alter the game plan? Did you have a game plan during the week, and then suddenly you turn up on Saturday and Storm Darragh bursting through in the middle of Enfield? Did you change game plans on the hoof, as it were?
I think certainly first half we had to change what we were doing a little bit when we were going into the wind. Obviously probably a little bit less kicking or less of our usual high box kicking, because that would have just come back in our faces. So you probably noticed a few more little shorter kicks, lower kicks from the guys to try and combat the wind. And then, doing things like tap penalties from our own 22 is definitely something that we would not normally do. So yeah, definitely that's an adaptation in the day, right, on the night. But in terms of our actual game plan, then once we got into the second half with the wind, it probably just enhanced it, because we've got all the things we wanted to do we would have done anyway, I think, in terms of where we were trying to attack them and things like that. So, yeah, it's just a credit to the players that they could adapt to that on the night, and helps having such experience in the team to be able to do that, doesn't it? So it's credit to the players to be able to adapt to that wind. I mean, I've never played in or coached in wind like that before. It was crazy. So I regret wearing shorts on the sideline, put it that way.
You mentioned experience, but the one player that did stand out for me, particularly after a week before where he had perhaps a few difficulties, was Fergus Burke at 10. Came on, and he's probably used to playing down in the South Island of New Zealand for all of his career, where it can blow a hoolie on occasions down there. But he really adapted to the conditions really well, I thought.
Yeah, I think, and Ivan as well at 9, don't you? You need your halfback, and Gareth when he came on, you need your halfbacks on form, don't you? When it's conditions like that, and how you try and get up the pitch and move around in the wind. He and the halfbacks as a pairing, I thought, stepped up. Yeah, 100%.
The other factor I think that was probably important was the return of some internationals. Key internationals like Ben Earl, like Maro Itoje, like Jamie George. I mean, how difficult is it to go for a season where you lose players for a tranche of games, which we thought would never happen when we went down to 10 teams? But I mean, that's for us to complain about. But the return of players like that is hugely important, isn't it?
Yeah, obviously, just the experience and the knowledge and everything that comes back into the room. It's like, and when they've been away for, I don't know how long it was, 2 months or 6 weeks or whatever in that autumn series, and then you get them back, it's almost like getting a new player in the room. It's like a real good boost to the squad, and I thought they all played brilliantly, so they certainly merited their comeback, didn't they?
Yeah. Can I ask you about the season so far? Because, as I say, in 2 weeks, we've seen 2 performances from Saracens that are kind of like at opposite ends of the performance chart. Start of the season, we started like an absolute steam train and had some great results, including that away result at Bristol, which was we still try to work out how on earth that happened ourselves. But has the season so far met your and the coaching staff's expectations, or were you expecting something different? Were you expecting to be a bit harder in the places or a bit easier or whatever? I mean, or is it the fact that, it's a really competitive league and, any team on any day can beat any other team, except for Exeter at the moment, apparently?
They probably will at some point, won't they, for sure. So, no, I think I don't necessarily want to speak for Mark McCall or Joe Shaw or these guys, but I think from my point of view, I think it's probably about where we thought it would be, isn't it? It's such a competitive league now that I think everyone can more or less beat everyone, home or away. I think we've played pretty consistently well, bar the Falcons game. Obviously, we lost to Leicester at home, but I thought we gave a really good account of ourselves without the internationals, and it came down to one score in the end, I think. So, and Quins away, we lost narrowly again and that was a bit of a funny game in that statistically, it was one we should have won every single day of the week, amount of pressure and all that sort of stuff that we had, territory, etc. We just couldn't quite do it, and sometimes that happens in derby games. So I think overall we're probably pretty happy with where we are. There's been a lot said, hasn't there, about a slightly new playing group. They want to go on a bit of a journey and find themselves, and I think that comes out after a bit of hardship. And I think the reaction to the Newcastle game was brilliant. So there's going to be ebbs and flows throughout the season. Obviously not being naive. I think if we win that Falcons game, we're back at the top of the league and everyone's rosy, but because it's so tight, be down to 4th and things like that. So I think you just have to sort of look at the bigger picture of the amount of new players or players that have left, and then a slight tweak to how the team is playing from last year, and put all that into a pot. We're probably pretty happy with where we are, I think.
Next up, of course, we've got Stade in the Champions Cup, the second game of the season. Stade are having a pretty shocking season themselves. They got beaten, a bit of shellacking on the weekend at Munster. They're not doing great things in the top 14 this year. They're towards the bottom of the league. Going back, meeting back up with Paul Gustard, former Saracens player and coach himself. Do we go into this game with a bit of confidence, or again, do we try to avoid the pitfalls of Falcons away, looking at a team that's perhaps not having a great season?
Yeah, look, I think there's a little bit in that question, mate. I think that, we should go there with confidence, because I think that we're a good team, like we've discussed. We had a good result last weekend, and we should take that into the game. But I think actually, if you look a little bit more closely at Stade, when they played at home, they walloped teams. They beat Racing by 30, 40 points. They beat Clermont by 30, 40 points at home. They've not been very good on the road. You look at the result last week, and if you just look at the result against Munster away, you probably think, not great. But they sent a B team, I think, in a lot of positions, saving their Premier players for the home game. I think it's a very French attitude to sort of batten down the hatches at home and really go for it at home. So I think it's going to be a huge test. They've got some incredible wingers, some huge forwards. So I think it's going to be a massive, massive test, mate. And I think the crowd and European fixture at home, in my 18 years playing or whatever it was, I never had an easy away game in France ever. So I think that's certainly an attitude we've got to dismiss. I think it's going to be a battle royale for sure.
But of course, a victory away in Stade really does set up the Champions Cup for a good season.
Yeah.
If you do get a victory, then you're looking pretty good in your pool, aren't you?
Yeah, of course. Points you've got to get the points where you can, can't you? And I think that we spoke about that just this morning as coaches. Like Saturday's result against the Bulls, it's only really worth much if you back it up, isn't it? And go over to France and get some points out of the game. So yeah, it's going to be a huge week, almost a test match like week, and so excited to get into it. Really, it's going to be fantastic.
And of course, a test match week, huge intensity. That sets you up then for the Christmas period, starting off with Saints at home. Now, I know you'll give the stock answer, which is you look at the game in front of you and worry about games afterwards. But again, you want to get that momentum going, ready to go back into the Premiership, don't you? Yeah,
I don't know if it is a stock answer. I think that we're constantly looking ahead and planning and all that sort of stuff as coaching staff. And this is the tricky nature, isn't it? This sort of period in the fixtures, like you go 3 or 4 weeks in the Prem Cup playing that competition, and suddenly it's like a standalone Prem game. Then you've got 2 massive European games, and then it's Christmas, and you've got 2 vital Premiership games either side of Christmas. So it's going to be a really, really tough, few weeks for us to manage now, because it's going to come thick and fast in the shitty weather, and all that sort of stuff comes in, and it becomes a real challenge if your squad doesn't. Your squad depth and how attritionally robust you are, and that'll take some management for sure.
But of course, you now as a coach over the Christmas period, unlike when you were perhaps playing, you can get stuck into the Santa Million and the Guinnesses and the brandies and the turkey and whatever, can't you?
My problem was I probably did that when I played as well. So, we'll enjoy Christmas for sure, but certainly one eye on work, no doubt.
Oh well, Rob, thank you ever so much for your time and the insight into your life now as a Saracen. And as I say, we welcome you from Saracens fans to the club and think you're doing a fantastic job already, part of the furniture, and that's it now. Now you've got the Saracens jacket on and whatever. You're one of ours, I always will be. But also to say from Saracens, ahead of the Christmas period, if you could send on the Fezcast best wishes to yourself and the club, the coaches and the players, and say Merry Christmas to them and wish them all the best for Stade away and, bringing back the duty frees, obviously ready for Christmas parties or whatever. It, yeah. And then, of course, Northampton Saints and then Bath away over Christmas. So we wish you all the best for that.
Thank you very much. And same to you. Really appreciate it. Thank you.
Cheers, Rob. Thanks a lot.
Thanks, mate.
Hi, this is Petrus Duplessis, and you are listening to the Fezcast.
This is the Fezcast.
So welcome back to the third part of the Fezcast, and a really good interview there with Rob Webber. The part that I found most interesting, Barry, was something that we've heard from players before, that in the wake of a really abject performance against Newcastle, Saracens is just a den of optimism. So there was no sort of bollocking or anybody saying, well, we better pull our socks up. It was just on to the next match and we got to do better.
As Rob said, the coaches didn't have to say to the players, right, we need a reaction, because they knew, and they would trust, they were basically trusting the players to sort of look at themselves, look at their own performance and say, we need to do better against the Bulls. And they certainly did. They G'd themselves up to do their own reaction, if you like, and the coaches didn't really have to have that conversation with the group.
What I liked about the interview, and I think I might have edited a little bit of this out, was at the beginning, he was quite reticent and nervous, but as it went along, he really got into it and got into his stride. I think there was a little bit of, I'm the new coach at the beginning, I better not put my foot in it, to really opening up and giving us a pretty honest view about how the season's going, Matt.
We'll give Jez some credit. He's a harmless teddy bear, really, Jez, isn't he? So he's probably put Rob at ease there as he goes along. But yeah, it was really good to hear from him. Someone that I think we were all quite keen to hear from, given some of the weaknesses that we had in our game last season. Rob was, before he even turned up, was under pressure to change all of that on his own. So it's nice to hear that it's not been a huge sweep. It's just been a bit of a a slow burn. So yeah, we're looking forward to seeing what else he comes up with, really.
So you're saying Jez is a non-threatening type, are you? I think that's right, actually. I think he absolutely did. He put him at ease and got him into a comfortable place, which is a great thing to do.
His bark's worse than his bite, isn't it?
Yeah. Well, he told him he was a Saracen forever. I don't know what he thinks about that. But he's been around the place and very interesting coaching career, including at Chicago, which is where Tim Sweel is off to. So I don't know whether that was the connection that he got himself the job there. But he is doing a good job. You know, the scrum this season is one heck of a lot better than it was last season. We've got a few additions to the squad. One in particular, I think, is really working out, and maybe we'll come on to that. So let's talk about Saturday, which was an extraordinary game and an extraordinary positive game, especially after the abject horror of the previous week up at Newcastle. I think we were all thinking, who's going to turn up to this game? And you've got to say, a very, very impressive Saracens performance, Matt.
Yeah, I think we've probably shown over the last 18 months or so that you can never actually predict what Saracens is going to turn up. We very rarely have momentum that continues from one match to another, to be honest. But yeah, a fantastic performance, really. I mean, we were looking at it, obviously, when we kicked off in the first half and sitting there next to my dad, and neither of us can actually see, sitting in the south stand, wind driving into our faces. I think we just need to be in the game at half time. That's all it needs to be. And didn't really dream of being 8-5 up, and could and should have been more if it wasn't blowing an absolute gale and managed to swerve a Fergusburg conversion from 10 metres out against the post. But yeah, just in general, it was a Saracens performance that we would say is pretty typical of Saracens. We sort of feel like we're a little bit underdogs slightly in a game, and that is when we turn up and play our best rugby. So yeah, fantastic, really, from what I could see.
That is a really good point, because what we don't know is we've seen in certainly last season, we could be absolutely sublime, and Quins at Tottenham comes to mind, and then be really bloody awful. And what we don't know is that the Saracens team of this season, and I think this Sunday, which we'll come on to discussing, as Rob Webber said, is going to be a good test of where we are and whether we can repeat it a second week. But talking about the weather as well, I was really glad to see that you were so delighted, because normally, as you know, I walk to the game, but I was at my daughter's in the afternoon and got the Northern Line, got talking to a couple of Saffers on the train who promptly said, "We've got a free ticket to the 100 Club. Do you want to come?" So you were really delighted at that, weren't you, as you were shivering in the North Stand?
I was dead chuffed for you. Yeah, sitting in the South Stand, which literally was dismantling itself around me. I had a long chat with one of the stewards, because at one point I was actually holding up a piece of the drain pipe which had dislodged itself from the stand and was about to smash someone on the head. So it was pretty dangerous in there, really. So yeah, I was really, really thinking of you in your plush seat in the 100 Club having a cup of tea.
With my free roast beef and beer. It was terrible. But one of the extraordinary things was I was sitting there at one point thinking, oh, bugger, we've got a penalty. Because I think there were two, definitely one, but where Elliot Daly taking them and it's ending up 15 yards behind him.
Yeah, it was absolutely ridiculous. And I mean, to go back to penalties and Fergus Burke as well, the one he did kick, he kicked as a normal penalty. It went sailing in between the posts and actually landed in front of the stand. It didn't get up. Normally they go over the top of the stand from that sort of distance. This one landed in front of it somehow.
But part of the impressive performance was watching them. I think it took about 2 penalties and 2 kicks to touch before the whole team realised, actually, we've got to run everything. But they did cotton on relatively quickly, didn't they?
Yeah, definitely. I mean,
took a minute.
It did take a minute. The one thing I was sort of wondering whether Burke could have an HIA that he would be completely all right, to see if we could get Tiff Eden on again, and whether he could repeat what he did against Quins, which was his head-high bullet under the wind, which was really impressive in that game. But when he came on towards the end, the wind was behind him, so he didn't have the chance to see whether that was a fluke or not. Man of the match, definitely Tom Willis, Barry.
Could make a case for lots of players, to be fair. I mean, Maro Itoje really disrupted their line out, and that's I wouldn't claim to be an expert on the Bulls, but I believe that's a big part of their game. And he just stopped that dead in the first half. I mean, he was just back to his best, I felt, over the last few weeks, and particularly in that game. But I mean, yeah, you could make a case for anyone, including Fergus Burke and Elliot Daly, who, although, as you said, he was probably glad to be relieved taking penalties at one point. But yeah, I mean, Tom Willis just does that week in, week out, and we're becoming perhaps almost blasé about it, but he is just dragging that side forwards constantly, even when we're not playing so well. The one thing you can guarantee is that Tom Willis will be having another stormer.
And you're right about Marrow. There was one breakdown in particular that was right in front of me, and it seemed as if his arm was about 11 foot long as it emerged on their side of the breakdown and just clamped onto the ball in the way that he does. But another extraordinary incident, Matt, was, and it might have been right in front of you, was how did Ben Earl get that try? It was just an extraordinary finishing, like a bulldozer going through some very big players.
Yeah, sort of the opposite corner for me. So I had a decent view of it, but not a fantastic one. I had a better view of what I actually thought was Maro Itoje dropping the ball over the line, but it did sort of turn out he had it knocked out of him. But yeah, Ben Earl's try, most wingers would be proud of that. Fending off defenders, having the strength to get over the line, dotting the ball down as he did. Far more difficult than Tom Willis's try, where he just saw the ball an inch away from the line, picked it up and put it back down again. It was nice and easy, wasn't it? But I mean, other players as well that worth mentioning, to be honest. Nick Ezekwe and Theo McFarland, I think, Barry, you mentioned sort of Marrow's disruption. I think he had two helpers in that as well, both Nick and Theo. And my favourite complaint on the Fezcast of Theo McFarland disappearing in big games is not happening anymore, which I'm glad to see. He has become that solid, dependable player that he needed to be. And yeah, Nick Ezekwe, I think, is probably one of the more underrated players in the Premiership. And although he is starting to get a bit more England recognition now, he's just consistently brilliant. So I think certainly second row, back row, that was where he really had a strength, and that's why Bulls kept conceding penalties at the breakdown and eventually yellow cards. I don't know whether you think the same, Duncan, but there was a bit of a weakness in the scrum still, but probably a bit of a minor blemish on the game.
For the first 3 scrums, I think it was, I was thinking this is going to be an ugly night. We were absolutely demolished. The 2 gentlemen South African who were with me said it was a strong Bulls team because all the internationals had stuck around after the autumn internationals. So they were not completely fully loaded, but very fully loaded. And you could tell that in the scrum. But once again, as the game went on, I think it was after about the 15th minute, I sort of felt we were in control of the whole game, including the scrum.
Once we let them get their try at the beginning, we never really felt like we were under immense pressure after that. I mean, we did obviously get through a lot of work and put in a lot of tackles, but I never really felt that we were struggling with them after that point. It was almost as if they sat back a bit and thought, well, that's it, we've got the first score, the floodgates will now open. And that really didn't happen. And that's credit to the boys. The scrum's difficult. We've not really had the chance to week in, week out have the same front row going in games. And until we get that, with the constant changing of personnel, I think scrums are still going to be a little bit of a weak spot for us.
I said I was going to mention one player who's come in on the scrum. Rhys Carey is never going to look like an athlete, and I've mentioned that many times, but he's starting to play like one. I think it's a bit like what happens with Will Skelton, is he's getting around the place more, which is enabling him to show not just his scrum ability, but a fair amount of skill.
Yeah, very prominent out there, wasn't he? I think he was actually, we started to lose a couple of scrums, and then he was taken off and it shored up again. So I think he possibly did expend his energy a bit in the first 55 minutes or so, and was a really key part of the defence actually for most of that first half. So he probably was absolutely cream crackered by that point. But yeah, I mean, even just in the last couple of months, you've seen that evolution with us. We signed him from Cardiff on the basis that he was getting around the park there quite well, but it does seem to have stepped up another level. So you're definitely right.
And maybe we'll see Fraser Balmain doing a 7-second 100 metres. You never know. But Ronnie Maui, when he came on, looked more solid than he has done. He's looked a bit tired after the international exertions that he's had. Was it him who scored the try, or was it an assist?
It was he sort of ping-ponged around and drew in everyone. I think it was literally following that Tom Willis was able to just move the ball that much further forward onto the line.
The Bulls team, in a way, behaved a little bit like the two guys next to me in that they became quieter and quieter as the game went on. And then with about 10 minutes to go, said that they were going to watch the rest of the match inside. And I think the Bulls played a little bit like that. After they'd had about 30 minutes of driving wind and rain in their face, they didn't really look like they were up for the game right at the end, Barry.
Well, funny enough, I thought they did quite well to keep going, because they did put us under a little bit of pressure, albeit in midfield, in the last 10, 15 minutes or so. They could quite easily have packed up and just given up and literally gone home at that point. But I felt that they kept going. They kept trying to play. They didn't really have too many answers to the wind conditions, but I felt they stuck at it well. I don't think anyone would have blamed them if they'd given up after about an hour.
No.
But the big question that we'll never know the answer to really is, how would the game have panned out if we'd have kicked off the other way round? If we'd have been playing into the wind second half, would we have got ahead in the first half and kept it or not? But I think we did exactly what we needed to do in that first half, and maybe they would have been trying to play the same. But
their coach claimed that. He likened it to winning the toss in cricket when the pitch is cutting up late in the game. He said we had that advantage, but you're right. Who knows? I don't think they realised that they needed to score a hatful of points in the first half. And like you said, I was sitting there thinking, God, if we get to half-time all square, that would be a brilliant result. And then we got a penalty, and it really was a super result. But let's have a look at the 3-word comments from Twitter. The first one here is Chris Bragranza. Very good one. Wet, wet, wet. Well, I'm glad they weren't playing, but...
my mum's got them.
you could certainly feel it in your fingers.
Oh dear. I couldn't.
Oh, blimey. Tim Hobden, Vicarage Road freezing. So he's saying it's as cold as Vicarage Road used to be. Nothing is that cold, Tim. Although it gave it a bloody good go, that's for sure. Josh, pretty accurate. Bulls blown away. I think the score backs you up there, Josh. Steve Liu, Tim Willis smashing. He was smashing everything in sight. It's an interesting situation, isn't it? That Ben Earl is the England number 8, and he can't get in that position for Saracens because Tim Willis is a better number 8 than him.
I think Steve Borthwick is looking stupider and stupider by the week, to be honest. That's the only thing I can really say about that.
And here's a complaint that I have to say I've heard from many, which is from Coldmore Bill. No Premier Sports. Matt and I have had a back and forward about the wisdom of the TV rights distribution in rugby at the moment. And I think, Coldmore Bill, you are reflecting something that a lot of people resent. The TNT Sports subscription is a lot of money, and to be asked to pay more is not the best of marketing. But
it's not great. It's not great, that one, is it? But like I said, I think we have to remember that actually it being on Premier Sports is of benefit to most of the fans of the various other clubs in the tournament. So it's us English lot that are a bit disadvantaged there, which is wrong. But
yeah, yes, that's true. In Wales and Scotland, they will be watching their teams on Premier Sports, but be subject to. I don't know if they sell the rights for England. They must do. They must do. But that is a very good point.
Yeah, it's certainly Wales, Scotland, and Ireland. They only need the one subscription this time round, which is a bit of a change for them. So
I'd actually bought the Premier Sports in the summer to watch the French rugby. So, but it means that I didn't wait until the special offer came out. So I've paid twice as much as everybody else, which you'll be really upset about, Matt.
I feel for you once again. Barry's got a smug look on his face as well.
I haven't got Premier Sports and I'm not going to. I do think they've missed a trick, actually, in not doing a game-by-game basis for it rather than a full subscription. I bet they sold very few subscriptions for a season or a month on the back of the champion stuff. But if they did a game-by-game, I think people would pay $6, $7.50, whatever per match.
Oh yeah, I'm not going to be able to watch the Stade Francais game. I haven't got Premier Sports either. But if you said you can watch that one game for a tenner, I probably would.
No, I think that's a very good point. Part of our discussion during the week is that Rugby League seems to be so much better organised than Union on this. There, you can either subscribe to Sky or there's an app that you can get on your smart TV and you can have a season ticket for that, I think £70 a year for all Super League rugby. Or, as you say, you can pay a £5 per match, which is what I'll be doing next season to watch the Catalan Dragons. Anyway, a superb performance. And as we said before, what's really going to matter is the game next week, and we'll be back after the break to talk briefly about that.
You're listening to the Fezcast.
Welcome back to the last part of the Fezcast. Being old, I've forgotten which part it is. It could be the third or fourth part, who knows? But anyway, looking forward to next week. Well, I am getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to get the Eurostar to Paris, not really knowing how it's going to go. As Rob Webber said, Stade Francais are not having the best of seasons, but like all French clubs, they can be mightily impressive at home. I don't know what their attitude will be to the Champions Cup. For some reason, Saracens were in the top 14. They'd be going hell for leather because that's what really counts to the majority of top 14 clubs. But what are you expecting to see, Matt?
I mean, I'm kind of just, as I'm doing quite a lot of...
Actually, you're not going to see anything, are you? Because
no,
you're not watching
I would expect to see 5 minutes worth of pointless highlights. I'm a bit... I'm going to regurgitate what other people are saying, that we don't really know what Saracens is going to turn up. And I think this game, more than any other recently, is really going to show us where we are this season. And I think, I don't entirely know what to expect, because I'm with you. French clubs, some of them completely pull the ladder up after a game or two in the Champions Cup and focus on top 14 survival because it is incredibly crucial to them. They got a bit of a hosing from Munster in the first match. I don't know what sort of lineup they put out for that, but one game down and no points for them.
I think it was a second string line out. And as you say, they are right down in the relegation fight down there, and all of their firepower, I think, will be going onto that because it really is vital, especially for a team as big as Stade Francais to stay in the top 14. And in France, that top 14 is really competitive. I guess it'll be the same team as this week, and a team that has just done brilliantly against a very, very big and powerful and good South African team. It's the big question, is the mental approach this season, and are they going to be as brilliant as they were on Saturday, Barry?
It's difficult to know. I mean, to go back 2 weeks to the Newcastle game and compare that against the Bulls, I actually think that shows what little difference there is between what we would class as a substandard performance and a pretty good one. I think the margins are so fine at that level of elite sport that you really don't know. You only need a little, very small swing to turn it one way or the other. It's interesting, actually, looking at Stade, because based on nothing more than their results, they actually look like a pretty decent side at home. It's their away form in the top 14 that seems to have done them in. So, I mean, they've got to go for it at home. They've just rested some of their bigger players. They're going to be fully loaded, I would have thought, on Sunday, and we'll have to be at the top of our game to be competitive, I feel.
It was a point that David Strettle made in the conversation with me, that the first game he played for Clermont was away at La Rochelle, and it was almost as if they'd won the European Cup when they won away at La Rochelle, because they weren't used to winning away. Congratulations to near on 300 people who've bought tickets through the SSA and are going to be sitting in the same place. So very much expecting that for those of you who have bought a Premier Sports subscription, you're going to be able to hear the Sarries fans, no matter how many Stade Francais people are there, because they normally make a good noise. And I think that's a record. I think that's a record away attendance that the SSA has organised.
That's all the more amazing, given that I think this is the one where the kickoff time has changed at the last minute as well, isn't it?
David Loxham, who does an amazing job, been on the show, and he does an amazing job organising the ticket allocations and what have you, does it all for nothing. And he's had to pay £140 to change his Eurostar to get there in time not to miss the kickoff. It was football's fault, apparently, because it was only announced about 2-3 weeks ago, whatever it was, that Paris Saint-Germain were going to be playing at home that night, and so the police said, well, we can't have rugby fans exiting at the same time as people might be arriving for the Parc des Princes, so the game was shunted forward by 2.5 hours, I think.
Just time to have a couple of extra pints before you go and watch the football and tear that up. There you go.
No, I've already decided we're going to be heading back to the Gare du Nord because we'll now have plenty of time for steak, chips and red wine before we get on the train. So there's a silver lining to everything.
I'm feeling sorry for you again.
I know you are. Looking forward to seeing everybody there. There's a meet-up at a brasserie. The email will have gone round called the Brasserie des Stades or something right outside. So I'll be looking forward to seeing everybody there. I guess I better not drink too much because I don't know whether Jez has got a Premier Sports subscription, so I might be the only one who's seen the game next week. So apologies to everybody if you get to hear me again. I'm dying for a week off, but there you go.
You might just have to interview yourself at this rate.
Oh, yeah, well, I do that all day, every day.
Perfectly capable, I'm sure.
The thing is, I'll have an argument.
And probably lose it.
I know, I always do. Get worn down. All right, well, thanks, guys. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Barry. Looking forward. Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed we have another win.
Yeah, let's hope so.
This is the Fezcast.
Doing all right for someone who's been dropped right in the pit, haven't you?
The old heart.
Sometimes these are the best ones.
Yeah, I'm going to leave a lot of this bollocks in. I tell you, it'll be different.
Right.